The first time I realized my husband was cheating on me, I wasn't snooping. I wasn't even suspicious. I was just trying to find my lip balm. It had fallen under the passenger seat of his car, and while I was digging around, I pulled out a silver clutch that shimmered like it knew it didn't belong to me. It was tiny, sequined, with a lipstick smudge near the clasp and the kind of perfume that smells expensive until it doesn't. I opened it. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Self-destruction, probably. Inside, there was a crumpled receipt from a rooftop bar we definitely couldn't afford. A $38 martini. Starfire Sapphire. I laughed when I read the name. It sounded like a perfume, or a mistake. The signature at the bottom wasn't his, but the initials on the rewards card inside, definitely hers. And suddenly, it all clicked. The late nights, the new cologne, the work trip he took to a city where he didn't have an office. I didn't say a word. Not to him. Not to anyone. I zipped the clutch shut and slid it back under the seat like I hadn't touched it. People think silence is weakness, but sometimes silence is the sound of the match being struck. You don't light the fuse until you know what you're aiming at. That night, I found her Instagram. She wasn't hard to track down. She'd tagged him in a photo. A hand with a Cartier watch clinked against a champagne flute. His hand. I recognized the scar near his thumb from where he cut himself trying to open a bottle of Prosecco on our 5th anniversary. She captioned it, "When he surprises you with a view like this, dizzy #power couple vibes." That was the moment. Not the cheating. Not the secret drink. Not the hidden clutch. It was realizing she thought he was rich. Not doing okay. Not we're getting by. No, rich. Jet set, luxury living, yacht party rich. I nearly dropped my phone from laughing. We had less than $600 in our checking account. I'd know. I was the one who kept us afloat. I did the budgeting. I knew exactly how much we spent on takeout and which utilities were 2 weeks behind. She thought she'd won some financial fairy tale. And he let her believe it. I didn't confront him. Not right away. I wanted to see how far he'd go. How long he'd keep up the illusion. How far down the rabbit hole a lie like that could take someone. I didn't even tell Sasha. Not at first. When I finally did, her reaction was about what you'd expect. "You're letting this happen?" she said, eyes wide, coffee cup shaking in her hand like it was part of the drama. "You're letting this girl think she's dating a trust fund when she's sleeping with a guy who buys his cologne at Rite Aid?" "She's not my responsibility," I said quietly. "But he is," she shot back. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't exactly right either. What I didn't tell her, what I didn't tell anyone, was that I needed to see this play out. Not to punish him. Not even to catch him. I already knew he was lying. I wanted to see what kind of liar he really was. Was he just bored? Or was he building a whole other version of himself? One where I didn't exist and credit card limits didn't matter? Turns out, it was the second one. I watched it all unfold like a slow-motion car crash. She posted photos of wine tastings and spa days. Always angled, so you couldn't quite see his face. She talked about how driven he was. How he was building something big. I knew what he was building. A mountain of debt and a fantasy with bad lighting. Sasha thought I was spineless. She started pulling away. Every conversation felt like a test I was failing. "You used to stand up for yourself," she said one night over drinks. What happened to that? I didn't have the heart to explain that sometimes standing still is its own kind of strength. You can't pull the pin until you know where the grenade's gonna land. In the meantime, I kept quiet. Let her believe he was a prince. Let him believe he could juggle both worlds. Let them both underestimate me. It's easy to overlook someone who isn't shouting. But I've learned something in all this. Still water doesn't mean safe water. Sometimes, it just means the current's deep enough to drown you. And I was done playing light. Sasha always hated quiet people. That's what she used to say. Anyway, still waters run passive-aggressive. She was a woman who believed in volume, in action, in flipping the table when necessary and asking questions later, preferably while holding a margarita. So when I told her about the affair and my decision to do absolutely nothing, she didn't just disapprove. She took it personally. "I'm sorry." "What?" she said, blinking like she'd misheard me through the steam of her cappuccino. We were sitting in her favorite cafe, the kind with Edison bulbs and moral superiority baked into the gluten-free muffins. "I'm not confronting him yet," I said, calmly. "I'm just watching." Sasha stared at me the way people stare at forest fires from too close. Fascinated. Horrified. A little singed. "You found the mistress's clutch in his car," she hissed. "You read her Instagram. You know he's playing Great Gatsby with her. And you're just, what? Observing? Are you writing a thesis?" More like collecting data, I said, sipping my tea. Oh my God, she muttered. You've lost it. I didn't respond. The truth was, there'd been a time I would have blown the whole thing up. I would have kicked him out, boxed up his things, and posted a tastefully bitter tweet about emotional labor and betrayal. I would have called her. Heck, I would have driven to the rooftop bar and told the bartender to put his drinks on my reality check. But that version of me was tired. Not broken, just exhausted from always being the one to start the fire and clean up the ash. Now, I wanted to watch. I wanted to see what kind of fantasy they could build together before it crumbled under the weight of reality. The trick wasn't in blowing up the lie. It was letting it rot in the light. But try explaining that to a woman who once ghosted a guy for forgetting her dog's name. Sasha leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, jaws set. You realize this makes you look pathetic, right? Like, you're not just letting him lie to you, you're letting him lie to her. She's not a victim, I said. She thinks she's dating a private equity guy. She's tagging him in photos like he's the main course. She's complicit. Complicit in what? Falling for a story? Sasha said, eyes flashing. You're the one feeding him silence. You're part of this. That one stung. Because maybe she was right. Or maybe she was just mad that I wasn't performing the right kind of rage. The public, proper kind. The kind that screams and throws plates and cries in bathroom stalls while friends hold your hair and hand you vodka. But I didn't want that scene. I wanted control. For once in my life, I wanted to pick the terms of my own unraveling. And that made me, in Sasha's eyes, a traitor. She didn't text me for a few days after that. Not even a meme or a passive-aggressive TikTok about what not to accept from your partner. And for a while, I let it be. But the silence stretched long, like a hallway with no end. By day 6, I cracked and sent her a message. Me. I know you're mad. I get it. I'm not proud of all this either. No reply. Meek again. Just trust me. I'm not being passive. I'm being precise. Still nothing. Sasha, who once showed up at my door with soup and a baseball bat after I got dumped in grad school, was ghosting me over a moral disagreement. And that, weirdly, hurt more than anything my husband had done. Because with him, at least, I expected disappointment. But Sasha? She was supposed to be my anchor. My ride or die. My, do we need to bury a body, person? And suddenly, I wasn't sure if she even liked who I'd become. Meanwhile, the mistress kept posting. There was a picture of a bracelet she captioned, when he just gets you pleading face Jim Stone #spoiled. I recognized it immediately. It was the same bracelet I had returned to the outlet mall 2 years ago because we couldn't make rent. He had rebought it. Maybe for her. Maybe to fix his image. Maybe just because he needed something shiny to dangle in front of her. That night, I sat in our bedroom and stared at the ceiling while he snored beside me like someone without a single secret in the world. I was angry. Not the wildfire kind. The deep, low-burning kind that simmers in your chest like a kettle that never quite whistles. I was angry at him. Angry at her. Angry at myself for waiting. And angry at Sasha, too. Because she was right about one thing. I wasn't just letting the story unfold. I was part of it now. But the difference was, I wasn't trying to be the hero anymore. I was the narrator. And the plot was just, her name was Lily. Of course it was. It was the kind of name that sounded like perfume. Light, sweet, vaguely aspirational. The kind of name that looked great in a signature with a heart over the I. I found it on a business card wedged into the same clutch I'd pulled from under my husband's seat, right next to a crumpled mint and a broken nail tip. Lily Armstrong. Personal stylist. Empowering confidence through fashion. I Googled her. Found her website. Slick design. Testimonials from influencers I'd never heard of and brands that probably sent her free scarves in exchange for TikToks. There was a picture of her on the homepage, all long legs and soft curls, smiling like she was in on the joke the rest of us missed. Her bio was vague in the way all Instagram bios are: dreamer. Go get her. Manifesting my soft life. #God's timing. She wasn't stupid. That's the part that surprised me. She was clever, in that curated way. She knew how to work angles, literally and metaphorically. Every selfie was tilted just so, every quote just ambiguous enough to sound profound if you didn't look too close. She probably spent her Sundays batch planning outfits and rehearsing stories for her grid. But when it came to my husband, she bought the fantasy like it was Black Friday and she'd skip breakfast. From what I could tell, she thought he ran some kind of tech-adjacent startup. Consulting was the word he used most often. She told her followers he was an investor with a creative soul, which was hilarious considering he once called Canva witchcraft. But I got it. I really did. He was charming in small doses, polished enough to fake depth. He could toss around just enough business buzzwords to sound important to someone who wanted to believe. And Lily? She wanted to believe. She was all in. She wore her illusion like a designer jacket, tight, expensive-looking, slightly borrowed. She posted screenshots of Spotify playlists he made her. They were mine. I'd made them during lockdown. One of them was literally called Quarantine Chill With You. She captioned them with things like, "He gets my taste in music, even the weird stuff." I felt like I was watching a Broadway play where someone stole my lines and forgot the stage directions. But still, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. Not really. There was something almost innocent about her delusion. Like she still believed that a guy who tips in cash and wears cufflinks unironically might be her ticket to a better life. That somewhere beneath the faded polos and half-truths, he was her launch pad. She wasn't chasing love. She was chasing a rival. And maybe, in her mind, he looked like a man who could get her there. But the cracks were starting to show. In one video, she showed off a gift box, candle, silk robe, a card that read, "To the woman who makes my world golden." She called it, just because energy. What she didn't know. I bought that robe 2 Christmases ago, off Amazon. I remembered the packaging. He must have found it in the closet where I kept in used gifts and rebranded it for his affair. I didn't even get mad. Just tired. Watching her open gifts I wrapped, sit in the same restaurants we used to save for anniversaries, parrot back compliments I'd once given him. It was like watching a rerun of my own life, except now the actors were prettier and the lighting better. But here's what Lily didn't post. The cheap wine he brought to her place. The way he turned his phone upside down during dinner. The fact that he never spent the night. Ever. She didn't post the silence when she asked about his childhood. Or the way he dodged questions about me. She was building a mansion on a sand dune, and she hadn't yet noticed the tide. But I had. I saw how he started dressing nicer. Using words like synergy. Leaving tabs open on high-end watches we couldn't afford, not even with financing. He was becoming the man she believed he was. Or trying to. And Lily? She was falling harder by the post. It should have been satisfying. Watching it all unfold. Seeing the illusion take shape, knowing the hammer would come down. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for her. Sad for me. Sad for the version of him who used to hold my hand under the dinner table like we had a secret that wasn't rotten. And still, I said nothing. I watched as Lily tagged him in a post with the caption, "Some people just get you." Grateful for this magic. A few of her friends commented hearts. One asked if she was moving in with him. Another replied, "This is what you deserve, girl." I almost typed a comment. Almost. But I didn't. I clicked the little bookmark icon and saved the post. Receipts, as Sasha would say. Always keep the receipts. The stage was set. The script was writing itself. And I was almost ready to cue. It started with the watch. A Rolex. Or rather, a Rolex. I spotted it on his wrist one Sunday morning when he was slicing grapefruit like he was filming a lifestyle vlog. New. I asked casually. He didn't look up. Early birthday gift. To myself. I knew we couldn't afford it. I also knew the real thing didn't come with a smudged clasp or a box that said Rolex in suspiciously thin font. He didn't buy a watch. He bought an illusion. The kind you snap on like armor and hope no one notices the cheap hinges. And that was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, he started dressing sharper. Pressed shirts, cologne that actually smelled expensive. He cleaned out our joint savings to lease a car with seat warmers and adaptive cruise control. Features he didn't understand, but said felt right for the brand. The brand. That's what he called it now. His personal brand. It would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. Watching him try to become the man Lily imagined, one overpriced dinner at a time. He started paying with cash more often, small withdrawals spread across different ATMs, like that wouldn't raise red flags. I didn't confront him. Not directly. I just made things visible. I left our utility bill open on the kitchen counter one morning, overdue stamp and all. I accidentally left my phone unlocked with the banking app open on the screen. I made dinner using the last things we had in the pantry, canned soup and stale crackers, and when he walked in with his designer sunglasses perched on his head, I smiled like I didn't notice the irony. Lily, meanwhile, was still posting like she lived in a perfume commercial. One photo showed the two of them at a jazz lounge with the caption, "He makes even Monday nights feel like Paris." Hashtag soft life. I zoomed in. That wasn't a jazz lounge. That was the bar 3 blocks from our house. The same one where the bartender still thought my name was Molly because my husband never corrected him. And the necklace she was wearing? The dainty gold one with the star charm? I'd pawned it last year to cover a tire blowout. Either he bought it back, or found a knockoff. At this point, I wasn't sure which option was worse. And then Sasha called. It had been almost 2 weeks of silence. Long enough that I thought maybe she'd written me off entirely. Her name flashed across my screen while I was standing in the baking aisle of the grocery store, staring at flour I couldn't justify buying. I answered on the second ring. I shouldn't have snapped at you, she said without preamble. I blinked. Hi. You're still a mess, she added. But I think I get it now. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. She told me she'd run into Lily. At a charity brunch, of all things. She was wearing head-to-toe white. Said she was channeling legacy wealth. I almost asked her if she needed a towel. Apparently, Lily had talked about her man and how they were planning a getaway soon. Somewhere discreet, she'd said. He's got stress at work. Sasha asked what he did, and Lily gave a vague answer about consulting for venture firms. And when she asked if she'd met the wife, oh, Lily had said, eyes wide. He's divorced. Not separated. Not going through it. Divorced. I could hear Sasha's silence on the other end of the line. It sounded a lot like guilt. I get it now, she said finally. You weren't being passive. You were letting him hang himself with his own rope. No, I said. I just stopped cutting him down. The cracks were spreading. He started coming home later. His stories got sloppier. He forgot details, dates, places, lies he'd already told. He once claimed to have a client dinner and accidentally sent me a text meant for Lily. Get dolled up. This place has a strict vibe. I replied, we out of ketchup? No response. But he brought home flowers that night. Daisies. My least favorite. I didn't say a word. Instead, I made a decision. I called in a favor from Sasha, one of the big ones. She owed me from college, the night I bailed her out after she locked herself in the science lab trying to impress a physics major. You still got that connection at Aubrey's? I asked. Aubrey's. That boutique hotel downtown. That's the one. 2 days later, I booked a dinner for 4 under my name. Private booth. Wine pairing. The works. I invited Sasha. And then I let the details slip. Just enough for him to notice. Just enough for him to bring Lily. I wanted them both there. I wanted the illusion to come face to face with the architect of its demise. Not to cause a scene. Not to scream or cry or throw plates. But to serve something far colder. Reality. I picked out my dress that night with care. Simple. Elegant. The one he said made me look expensive. I wore it like armor. Let's see how polished his fantasy looked when the lighting wasn't filtered and the bill came. Aubrey's was the kind of place where they ironed the napkins into origami and poured water like they were handling moonshine. A little too fancy to feel warm, but just fancy enough to keep everyone on their best behavior. Perfect. Sasha and I arrived first. She wore emerald green, because of course she did. Sasha never showed up small. I stuck to navy, clean, structured, no distractions. I wanted to look like a woman who wasn't there to cry or beg or break. We were seated in a corner booth with just enough lighting to see Li's sweat through a linen collar. They'll come, I said, checking the time. You're sure? She asked, sipping her wine with both eyebrows raised. I was. And right on cue, 10 minutes in, he walked through the door. Lily was with him. She wore a dress that shimmered like someone dared her to outshine the chandeliers. Her heels clicked with every step like punctuation on a sentence she thought she was winning. He froze for half a second when he spotted me, just long enough to register the trap. I smiled and waved. He hesitated. Then, doing his best impression of a man in control, he led her to our table. Surprise, I said, folding my napkin into my lap like we were old friends meeting by coincidence. Lily blinked, her glossed lips parting slightly. Oh, I didn't realize that I'd be here. I finished for her. She looked to him. He looked anywhere but back. This is Sasha, I added, nodding to my right. She's been dying to meet you. Lily sat slowly. My husband followed like a man heading into surgery. I wanted to feel smug. I didn't. What I felt was colder. Cleaner. Like the air just before a storm. So, Sasha said cheerfully, how long have you two been together? Lily beamed, like she hadn't quite clocked the undertone yet. A few months. My husband cleared his throat. We're, still figuring things out. Oh, you're not divorced? Sasha said, all teeth and innocence. Lily stiffened. Her gaze darted between the two of us. Wait. I turned to my husband. You told her we were divorced? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Reopened it. It wasn't like that. It wasn't exactly a lie, Lily offered, her voice cracking slightly. I tilted my head. Wasn't it? Silence. Utensils clinked faintly from nearby tables. For a full beat, no one breathed. Then Sasha leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand like she was watching live theater. You know, she said, I always wondered what it looked like when a lie tried to shake hands with the truth. Lily stood abruptly. I think I need some air. I think you need receipts, I said softly, pulling out my phone. One swipe. The photo appeared. Her. The bracelet. The caption. He just gets me. I passed the phone across the table. She took it, hands shaking just enough to betray the fury boiling beneath her lashes. That bracelet. I said. He gave me that first. Then rewrapped it. You wore my leftovers. Not just emotionally. Literally. Lily stared at the screen, then at him. You lied to me. He finally snapped. Lied to you, he barked. You thought I was some millionaire. You posted about yachts, for God's sake. You think I have a yacht? I drive a 10-year-old Nissan. Lily's voice dropped. Cold. Sharp. And you let me believe it. You let me build a whole life on a fantasy. You wanted the fantasy, he shouted, and a few heads turned. You're just mad it came with a crack in the marble. And you're mad you couldn't keep up with your own illusion, I said quietly. The waiter appeared, wide-eyed. Should I come back? Yes, I said. But not for a minute. Lily turned to me. Her mascara was still perfect, but her eyes had changed. Less sparkle. More steel. I didn't know, she said. I believe you, I said. And I did. She looked back at him. I was stupid. No. I said. You were hopeful. That's worse sometimes. She nodded once. A regal little thing. And then, without another word, she walked out. He didn't follow. He sat down, exhaling like a man who'd just had his resume torn in half. You played this whole thing like chess, he muttered. No, I said. I just waited for you to trip over your own board. Sasha clinked her glass gently against mine. To performance art, she said. I toasted back. To closure. And as my husband sat there, deflated and exposed, I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside, a copy of our separation agreement. Already drafted. Already signed. All he had to do was add his signature. Consider this the bill, I said. For the wine, the lies, and the borrowed dreams. I stood, dropped it in front of him, and left without looking back. The night air hit my skin like a... He signed the papers 3 days later. No drama. No begging. No long text messages at 2 a.m. laced with nostalgia and backhanded guilt. He just dropped the envelope on the kitchen counter like it was a utility bill and left without a word. Maybe he thought I'd chase him. Maybe he hoped I'd scream, or cry, or say something to make myself small again. I didn't. I just turned off the light and shut the door behind him. After that, the silence in the house felt different. Not like absence. Not like loneliness. More like space. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment above a bakery 2 towns over. The walls were thin, and the water pressure was questionable, but the scent of fresh bread every morning made up for it. The landlord gave me a deal because I paid 3 months up front, thanks to the emergency savings I'd been quietly building while he chased his champagne illusions. I donated the couch we'd bought together, kept the books, threw out the throw pillows that never actually matched anything. I took what felt like mine and left what didn't. And for the first time in years, I slept with the door cracked open, because I wasn't afraid of who might walk through it anymore. Sasha helped me move. She showed up in jeans and a ponytail and brought overpriced coffee and the kind of friendship that doesn't need apologies to start again. You did it, she said as we folded blankets into a crate that once held broken dreams and now held hope in linen form. Feels weird, I admitted. Freedom usually does, she said. I got a job. Nothing flashy. A content editor for a mid-sized brand. Flexible hours. Low ego. The kind of job that lets you write in the margins of your life instead of consuming every page. It felt good to be needed without being drained. Lily, surprisingly, reached out. She sent a short message through Instagram. Just one sentence. You were right. About all of it. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't need to be part of her unraveling any more than she needed to be part of mine. We had both played roles in a script we didn't write. It was enough that she saw the stage now for what it was. My ex tried texting once, weeks later. Hope you're well. Maybe we could talk. I didn't answer. Not because I was punishing him, but because peace isn't something you explain to people who profit from your chaos. Some nights I still thought about the way it ended. About how no one ever really wins in these stories. They just survive them. And sometimes surviving is the most triumphant thing you can do. I started going to therapy. Not the fix me kind, but the remind me kind. Remind me who I was before I learned to be quiet to keep the peace. Remind me that softness is not weakness and silence is not consent. My therapist asked once if I regretted not confronting him sooner. No, I said, after a long pause. I didn't want to win a fight. I wanted to end a pattern. And I had. The bakery below me hosted open mic nights. I went once, just to watch. The barista, a girl with a nose ring and the energy of a Labrador puppy, nudged me halfway through a poem about lavender and longing. You write? She asked. I used to, I said. You should again. I did. Slowly, at first. In a journal. On napkins. On the back of receipts. Little lines that turned into paragraphs. Paragraphs that turned into pages. One night, I wrote a story fiction, technically about a woman who let her world burn, then roasted marshmallows over the ashes. The girl at the bakery read it and asked if she could put it on the community board. Sure, I said, grinning. Why not? A few weeks later, someone else read it and left a note under it. I needed this. Thank you. I didn't sign my name. Didn't need to. I was building a life now where being known mattered less than being real. Where the things I wrote didn't have to be wrapped in performance. Where I could just exist, flawed, healing, whole. And that was the exit strategy. Not revenge. Not some grand rebrand of my heartbreak. Just peace. Quiet, stubborn peace. And maybe that's the best kind of ending, the kind that doesn't need applause. The kind you live, one soft morning at a